This is part of the Micro Teaching ED 403 course on coral reef ecology. We're looking at coral taxonomy. This course examines a number of elements. You can see them here: origins, the biology, the ecosystem structure, biodiversity, human uses, major issues, and looking at environmental management and sustainable use of reef resources. From this session, students will be able to describe the diversity of coral environment, note the key skeletal features, and be able to utilise the guide. This session is presented in 4 parts: a video, exploration of the guide, practice and assessment. First of all, let's just look at coral reefs. Coral reefs are very diverse, containing many different elements, from some of the soft corals that you can see here, right through to the branching and massive corals you can see on the right hand side. The high diversity makes corals very attractive, but it also makes it very difficult to understand their structure. The only real solution is to have some mechanism to describe the reef, so that you can look at, for instance, a particular coral and be able to give some information on it. Maybe its family, maybe its type, and then be able to see how it's composed into other areas. You can see on the video here, which was taken near Leluvia, that there's many corals all interacting for the same space. That particularly the soft corals are interacting with some of the harder corals, and they're all competing for light. And that light can generate lots of different structures. There's no set format here. They're able to have branching forms, which you can see. They can have massive forms, plate forms, finger-like forms, and a whole variety in between. There's also ones that move around and they're reasonably mobile, but other ones mostly are fairly stationary. The high diversity is one of the key attractions to examining a coral reef, and of course its fishes and invertebrates. So we're going to be using the Coral Finder guide, which you can see here. We have some branching plates and meandering ridges. You can see the pictures on the left, massive and thick colonies. You can see it tells you where to look for them in the pages on the right. You're also looking at some thin plates, and you can see some examples there. Some solitary ones like the fungus type corals, and there's the large daytime ones and some columns, and there's also the fire corals.
This diagram is from the glossary page of your Coral Finder, which you should open up and follow along with. To use the Coral Finder effectively, you need to learn the terms in blue. These terms and concepts have been culled from hundreds in use by coral taxonomists, so it's a fairly painless way to start. The Coral Finder is the bridge between our underwater and topside experience of corals. Underwater, we see the tissue of the living animal, while topside, we can look at the bleached coral skeleton. The Coral Finder helps bring this all together. Once you learn these terms, you will be able to recognize around 70 genera. The coral's internal limestone skeleton is secreted by the tissue that overlies it. The tissue is separate from the skeleton, and in some corals like the Cynarina, the skeleton can be seen through the tissue when the coral inflates it with water. The coral skeleton is built by the inner surface of the polyp animal, and it is called a corallite. Although there are many types of coral that often look very different from each other, this fundamental principle remains the same. The living animal is called the polyp, and it lives in its own skeletal cup called a corallite. And when polyps clone themselves into groups of corallites, they form a colony.
The Coral Finder book is an excellent guide for you. It's mostly visual. It makes a lot of sense. You don't need to know a lot of technical terms. And so the next step for you is to use this book in its PDF form to help you identify some of the families that are shown in this next survey.